Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell.
Your reputation precedes you.
Thank you, sir.
Wasn't a compliment.
Trust your instincts. Don't think, just do. You think up there, you're dead. Believe me.
The end is inevitable, Maverick. Your kind is headed for extinction.
Maybe so, sir, but not today.
Hello and welcome
to episode 311
of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk
filmmaking,
from indie film to studio films and TV and
everything in between.
How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to
royally F them up.
In our very, very humble opinion, I'm Giles Alderson.
I'm Dom Lenoir.
And we are the Filmmakers Podcast. Today on the show, we have a very special guest.
He's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you could say he was top of his class.
Yep. You could say he's a gunbelievable guest.
You could say that. You could say that I'd be his wingman any day.
You could.
Who is it, Dom Lenoir?
It's Joseph Kosinski, director of Top Gun Maverick.
Obviously, you read that at the title, so you know. But anyway, that was fun for us to do.
Yeah, it was fun for us.
We've
had to keep this under wraps. I mean, I've been sort of
top secret. You could see.
I've been very top secret because we've got to do a lot of effort for this episode, and it's a really exciting, huge guest. But, you know, and it's one of our favourite films, and. So yeah, I had to keep very, very tightly sealed lips about it.
Yes. Now, Top Gun Maverick, if you don't know, you've not heard of this film.
If you don't know, what are you doing on this podcast, honestly?
It's a sequel to Top Gun. And it made 1.5
billion.
1.5 billion. In the box office. It is now available on Prime and Apple TV.
And it's gone back to the cinema for 2 weeks only.
Woo-hoo.
I mean, you have to go and see it at the cinema. I've seen it twice in the cinema, and it surprised me. No, sorry, 3 times in the cinema. And it surprised me how much each time it's just as exciting as the time before. It's just such a big blockbuster.
It's brilliant. And Dom got to sit down with the director, Joseph Kosinski. I did not.
You did
Dom,
not.
I think you called me, messaged me.
Yep.
I was in Spain, in somewhere, maybe some cave somewhere.
Yep.
Looking at stalactites.
Caving in.
Deep in a hole. And I got this really exciting call from Dom saying, I've got a really, really big guest. This is really exciting. And basically the date of the recording was 2 days before I came back from filming in Spain. But I didn't care because it's for you guys. We wanted you to have this. As much as I wanted to do this, I knew that Dom would smash it and I knew it would be fantastic. So, what did you talk about, Dom? Well, I'm excited.
Oh, so many things. We talked about his preparation.
Oh.
We talked about him going on actual Navy cruises out in the sea.
Really?
You know, yeah, going on his research mission.
Wow.
We talked about how you make a blockbuster. Working with cast. We talked about working with legends of film like Tom Cruise, Jerry Bruckheimer, Christopher McQuarrie, like all these titans that were involved in helping make this film.
That's incredible. It's incredible. If you don't know Joseph Kosinski, you might go, oh, has he just blown up from the middle of nowhere? Kind of has. Back in, 2010? 10 years ago, he made Tron Legacy. That's kind of his breakout. Before that, he'd done music videos and bits of VFX and then done some video games. And to suddenly break out with Tron Legacy, it's huge. And then he directed Oblivion, which also starred Tom Cruise, which he wrote as well. And he made the graphic novel, its original story. Then he directed Only the Brave and then Top Gun Maverick. And also this year, Spiderhead, which starred Chris Hemsworth and Miles Teller. So this guy knows what he's doing. Right, Tom Cruise asked him back to direct Top Gun Maverick. Wow.
Well, there's the story. The story's in the episode,
Is it?
so we won't ruin it for you now.
Oh,
but yeah, it's.
I can't wait to listen. Honestly, I cannot wait.
Yeah,
super excited.
It's pretty exciting, and we got to record in the Ham Yard Hotel, which is one of my favourite places. Big shout out to Jane for giving me a nice. Jane from Paramount gave me a nice cookie.
Look at you dropping the Paramount name. Oh, Jane from Paramount gave me a cookie. Good for you, Dom. Good for you. I love it.
Before we dive in, there's one thing which we do talk about in the episode, but I think we should talk about here, which is these kind of big blockbusters. they should get the love they deserve from awards season. I mean, you know, films like Interstellar, Inception, you know, these huge films that actually have, they're brilliant filmmaking, and they often get snubbed. Yeah. And it's really annoying.
Because to make a film like this, you've really got to know what you're doing. You've really got to be on top of your game. And so I don't see why these aren't rewarded.
Yeah, so
awards.
BAFTA, Oscars, if you're listening to this, which you should be.
They will be.
They will be. Give this some awards.
I totally agree.
That's how it works.
That's how it works, right? That's it. We've said it. That's it.
There we go.
There we go. We are, 3/4 through our tour now for 3 Day Millionaire?
Yes, yep.
Screening tour.
On the other end of the spectrum.
On the other end of the spectrum, from Top Gun Maverick. From one indie film to another. Yes, so if you haven't seen that in cinemas yet, it is available now on Sky Store. Myself and the big man Jack Spring probably chatted to Dom Lenoir last Tuesday all about how we made that film. And really, we talked about mental health in film and the importance of having good teams and working well with
it was a good episode, actually.
Yeah, it was really informative. I really enjoyed the chat. So, if it's your first time listening to this podcast, just because Joseph Kosinski's name popped up, I Top Gun Maverick. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the show. We have over 300 episodes, and we've been doing this for 5 years. So go back to our backlog of guests. If there's screenwriting you like, if it's just directing, it's just producing, go to our website, thefilmmakerspodcast.com, where you can type in, if you go to the podcast section, you can type in just directors or just screenwriters. Obviously, don't take off the just.
Yeah.
And all of those will come up for you.
You can listen to all the episodes that I did.
You can write Dom Lenoir's name, and all of Dom's episodes will come up.
And then you can listen to the other ones.
Yes, if you can be bothered after that.
Yeah.
So thank you for supporting, and do support us more. If you do like this, tell all your friends. Go on iTunes, go on Spotify, do rate this, do download it, be part of the team.
Sign up for Giles' holiday fund, also called
the Patreon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, my holiday, because I have massive holidays every year, and obviously the money we make from this podcast. So do go to Patreon.
Disclaimer, we are a non-profit. We do this out of love for film.
As your lawyer, you had to say that. As my lawyer, you had to say that. So that is patreon.com/The Filmmakers Podcast. Link are in the show notes for all that. Check it out. If you want to email us any questions, thefilmmakerspodcast@gmail.com. And we have merch. We got 30% off right now because we're going to do a whole new range for the new year. So if you want a really cool t-shirt or a mug,
don't be a mug and get some merch.
Love that. Coming up soon as well, we're going to have an episode with the amazing Phil Hawkins. His film, Prancer, Christmas Tale, is available now. So check it out. It's on Sky. It's a Sky original, so you can watch it now. It's a Christmas movie. It's amazing. But Phil will be on very soon talking all about how he made that. And we'll have our Christmas special coming up for you, where all the hosts come on and chat shit for many hours just for you. What else?
I mean, that's it. What do you want?
What more do you want?
You got Top Gun Maverick.
It's Top Gun Maverick, ladies and gentlemen.
Listen up.
So sit back, relax, enjoy this week's Filmmakers Podcast with Top Gun Maverick director
Joseph Kosinski
and the amazing Dom Lenoir.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Welcome, Joseph Kosinski, to the Filmmakers Podcast. We are absolutely delighted to have you here. In my mind, Top Gun is one of the most enjoyable cinema experiences I've been to in the last 10 years.
Wow.
How are you feeling about the success and the unbelievable reception of the movie?
Number one, I'm relieved, that it worked, because it was obviously a lot of hard work for everyone who worked on the film. The bar set by the first film was very high. I'm just very happy that the film was released in theaters. That was why we made it. It's what we made it for. And for a year or two there was a lot of uncertainty as to when the film would come out and how people would see it. But we got it out on the big screen, and it seems like people really enjoyed seeing it that way. So that's very gratifying.
Did you feel any pressure from the sort of the Tony Scott legacy? And I'd like to say as well that you've done an incredible job of bringing that back to life. I kind of was watching it and thinking this is Tony Scott 2.0.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that as a huge compliment. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's no, you can't fill his shoes. There's no replacing him. What he did with the first film was revolutionary, and certainly his own visual style. And Jerry's got to get a lot of credit too. I was saying to Jerry the other night for hiring the director of The Hunger, to make a big blockbuster film. That's a really, in hindsight, it makes perfect sense, but at the time it's certainly a brave decision. But certainly I was inspired by the first film. I saw it when I was 11 years old, so it's one of those those films you see when you're young that make a huge impression. They're always a part of you, and getting to figure out my version of a Top Gun movie that felt like it was in the same universe as Tony's film was a really wonderful creative challenge.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, exactly the same for me, the same age range. I mean, that was Hollywood for me growing up, was watching movies like Top Gun and Star Wars, and those kind of, those epic movies. And I watched it hundreds of times. And yeah, it was such a sort of a pleasure to see that growing up. And to me, this felt like a sort of a return to cinema. In a way, like the kind of films that I grew up loving, the kind of really classic sort of Hollywood 80s, 90s action films. And you kind of like brought it back, because a lot of reboots these days, that they feel like they're trying to do something new, but they're going too far away from what made the originals great. And I think that's one of the things that was really successful in your adaptation, was creating something new, but not kind of rewriting the rule book to the point where people didn't recognize what they grew up with. What was the sort of process of you even getting involved in something like this?
Well, it started with Jerry Bruckheimer sending me a script, which is a pretty
not a bad way to start.
It's a pretty epic thing to be able to talk about, as a director.
Or Jerry, as you call him now.
Yeah, Jerry, as I call him now. Yeah, he sent me a early draft of a script that they were working on in 2017, which had a couple things in it that I liked. It had the character of Penny Benjamin, which I thought was very clever. It also had Maverick stealing an F-14 at the end, which was, just, obvious. You got to do that. So, but I had some ideas on what Maverick's story could be, where it starts, and what the emotional spine of the film could be, because that wasn't there yet. How I wanted to shoot it obviously wasn't on the page. So when I went into Jerry and kind of pitched my take on it, Jerry really liked the ideas and said, "You've got to pitch these to Tom in person. You really need to get with him in a room." And I was like, "Great, let's do it." And he said, "All right, well, Tom's shooting Mission in Paris right now, so let's fly to Paris. We'll get some time with them and you can pitch it." So I flew with Jerry to Paris in May of 2017. We had less than half an hour. It was right in the middle of a shoot day, to get Tom. Chris McQuarrie let Tom go from the set, which was very gracious of him. And we met in a hotel room, and I just I had a presentation. I had a poster.
Did you have like a pitch deck?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We're always talking about how good pitch decks are.
Yeah, essentially, on day one of photography, we released an image of Maverick staring at an airplane in the distance, and it said, "Feel the need." I had a mock-up of that image as to kind of kick it off. And I just basically said to him, I pitched him the rooster storyline, which I felt was kind of the emotional spine of the film. And the moment I uttered that, I could see the wheels in his head start to turn, because I think he came into that room thinking that there was probably no way he was going to make another Top Gun. But once I pitched that idea, I could see him all of a sudden start to wrap his head about how he could get back into this character and a reason to go back, because he doesn't have to go back. In fact, it's very dangerous probably to go back. It could have been an epic disaster. But once he had an emotional reason to go back to Maverick, I could see the wheels start to turn. Then I pitched the idea of where to find Maverick, because that was always, I think, something that they hadn't quite figured out. And I really like this idea of finding him as a test pilot out in the middle of the desert, like Chuck Yeager at the end of The Right Stuff, pushing the envelope of what's possible. Still, a pilot, at the helm, flying aircraft and being Maverick, essentially, going faster than he should and getting himself in trouble. So I pitched that idea of the Dark Star sequence. Then I just, talked about how I wanted to shoot it for real. I showed him some of these Navy videos where these pilots had captured their own training with little GoPros, like one stuck over their shoulder on the canopy. And obviously Tom was, that's the only way he'd make a Top Gun movie, is if he could capture it for real. And then finally I said, we can't call it Top Gun 2, because that's what it was called at the time. I said, this is his story. We got to call it Top Gun Maverick. And I think that sealed the deal. Yeah. So he pulled out his phone, and from that room, but with Jerry and I sitting there, he called the head of the studio and said, we're making another Top Gun. And they were very excited.
That's power, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That is power. And yeah, I don't know if I'll ever see that again.
But I mean, I think what I really love about this story, and it's kind of why I always make films, and what always touched me about films, was, you're talking about the emotional arc, but that to me is what separates, good films from, the incredible ones and the ones that sort of really stick with you. And the original Top Gun was an incredibly powerful, emotional film, and I think that's what I kind of like about Tony Scott's some of his work, is there's often a bit of melancholy, and there's sadness, and there's grief, and there's things to work through. And I think that is the difference to me about making a good Hollywood movie and a sort of an average Hollywood movie. How did you approach sort of treating this as a franchise that's a blockbuster, something huge, whilst keeping that sort of authenticity? And was it challenging?
Well, I had just come off a film that for me in my career was very important and an amazing experience, and that is a movie called Only the Brave, a smaller movie about wildland firefighting, but a very emotional experience, because it was the true story of 19 firefighters that lost their lives in Arizona when they were trapped in a canyon by a massive wildfire. And on that film, I worked with Miles Teller and Jennifer Connelly, and it was a really intense, hard film to make from a dramatic and emotional point of view, but for me as a director, an important one, because up to that point, I was kind of known for the two films I'd made, which were science fiction films, which, are sometimes harder films to emotionally engage an audience, because you have so much visually going on that it can be a bit overwhelming. So I was coming off that film, and I think I was just in the right headspace to really approach this film, like the first film, as a drama, first and foremost, a rite of passage story of this guy, but wrapped in this massively, entertaining action film, but to approach it as a drama first. And obviously, I cast Jennifer and Miles in Top Gun, so I was using kind of
bring some friends along,
but also just bring along two tremendous actors that I knew were going to just infuse this film with the right energy and give Tom some really incredible actors to play opposite off of,
because you need actors that can go there with that kind of reactive emotional depth as well, especially when you're handling like a really dramatic subject matter. And two actors who had worked in dramatic films and could just go toe to toe with Tom, who's an incredible actor. I mean, in the last, I think maybe a younger generation sees the action films and knows him for these incredible sequences that he's able to do. But, you look at the first 15, 20 years of his career, and it's just, it's a career like no other. The choices he made, the performances he put in are incredible. So we have, Jennifer, we have Miles, Val came back, who another legend that, I've always wanted to work with. So what's the process for you casting people once you've got Tom involved? Is it just like every door's open, you just start ringing around and it comes together very easily? Or is there still a bit of a challenge to sort of lock these people down despite your relationship?
Listen, the director, the job of a director is you always have to convince people, whether they're crew or cast, to be in your film. You can't ever approach it with the attitude of, you're so lucky I'm calling you to be in Top Gun. I never approach it that way. It's always making the best case you can of why they're right for your film. So, when it came to, Jen and Miles and John Hamm and Ed Harris and Val, you're making sure you're making a case for why you want them to be in your film. With some of the other roles, with actors that I was not familiar with, I have to give a lot of credit to Denise Chamian, our casting director, who just put faces and tape in front of me of people that she was excited about, but that I wasn't aware of. And so I looked at hundreds of auditions and did in-person auditions with dozens of people to narrow it down to my top 2 or 3 for each role. And then I sat with Tom and Jerry and we watched those finalists together and made our choices as a team. And, Tom's experience casting, Jerry's discovered so many. The list of actors that Jerry's discovered is too long to name off, but having them, hearing their gut reactions to the choices that I had selected to narrow it down was really great. And I couldn't be happier and more proud of the cast we put together for this film.
Yeah, I mean, the Phoenix character is great, and she really makes an impression as well.
Yeah, and Monica will tell you, I called her back like 4 or 5 times. It was like...
what? Repeat auditions?
Yes.
Okay,
it was like,
nice,
okay, now, Joe wants you to come back. This time he wants you to wear a flight suit, This time, you're going to be in a chair and he's going to talk you through an aerial sequence. So, yeah, Monica was someone I was just really intrigued with from the start. She just got such a unique combination of qualities and an inner strength that you just can't fake. And then, by the time we got her in the F-18, she was like a warrior, she did an incredible job. And so, yeah, luckily it all worked out. But casting is the most important job a director has. And if you do it correctly, you've really, set yourself up well to succeed.
Yeah. So what was the process? I mean, you obviously had some suggestions in the writing process. What was your next step in terms of developing this into something that what was a finished product, sort of ready to shoot? Because you collaborated with Christopher McQuarrie as well. What was his involvement?
Yes.
Jerry's and
3
Tom's?
3 writers. The first thing I did was I went onto a carrier for a couple of days.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, I drove down to San Diego, caught a Greyhound flight, which is it's a transport that flies from San Diego to the carrier, catches the arresting wire. So you get to experience what it's like to land on a carrier deck.
Oh, wow.
And I spent a couple days out there with the Navy and just experiencing what it's like to live on a carrier. And I got to run my story pitch past, the Navy members, naval aviators, and the commanding officer, and I got to hear their feedback to the story that we were putting together. So that was an invaluable experience. The whole 3rd act mission was done in collaboration with naval aviators, because basically the writer Eric Singer and I put the question to a bunch of them, which is, what is the gnarliest mission that you could ever imagine having to go on? And they basically said, a low-level ingress through mountains to do a laser-guided drop on a small target with a high G pullout, and then having SAM threats and 5th-gen fighters on top of you, in enemy territory. So like that whole sequence was built from their kind of dreaming up the toughest mission. They added one extra element, which we didn't put in the movie, which was, and you do it at night.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, that's
very
crazy.
Good. We can't see it.
Yeah. But it would mean doing the whole thing in night vision goggles. And I was like,
yeah,
I don't want to see that. I want to be, in some epic landscape. So then Eric Singer laid out the first draft, which kind of laid out the structure of the film. Aaron Kruger came in and added a second layer, really brought in some really essential elements like the Great Balls of Fire sequence with Rooster and the scene with Iceman, and some really strong, emotional, character-driven connections. And then Chris McQuarrie came on a month or 2 before we started shooting, after he had finished Mission 6, I guess, and really just polished up what we had in a beautiful way, at that point we had cast the film. So Chris has this amazing ability to tailor roles to actors and to the voice that actor has, and really customize each role for each actor in the film. So it was an incredible collaboration between three very talented screenwriters. And typically you'd think, you have three writers of that caliber, they're each going to kind of pull it in a different direction. This was a case of really each one moved it down the field in a wonderful way to get it to, where we ended up.
I think that's a very important point about sort of collaborating with writing. When you're taking notes from a producer, no matter whether it's a small indie or a big studio film, I've always felt it's about, is this note, like I'm going in this direction, this is where the movie's going, this is kind of where the story and the characters are authentically going. If I take these notes, can I find a way to keep it sort of sailing in the right direction? Because otherwise I think people can get lost, and they can sort of try and move one way to please one person and another to please another. So I suppose it's also your job, is it, to communicate clearly like where this is going, so that when they're giving you notes, they're sending the ship in the right way, or the airplane.
Staying on target is often the job of the director. And then you remember you've also got the testing process. At some point you're going to have a test audience weigh in. And like you said, we often use the term, what's the note behind the note, which is what's the really core of what they're getting at,
or the area that needs work.
Right, because like an audience might say, this part of the movie feels a little slow. And you could look at that and go, oh, well, we just need to tighten it up and make it shorter. That might not be the actual problem. The reason that the movie feels slow there is because they're not connected to the story. They're not tracking with the story. They're confused. They don't know how someone feels. So you have to kind of dissect and get underneath the hood a little bit and figure out what's the real problem here and how do we fix it. And that's a process that, you have to go through it a number of times, the testing process, to figure out what you want to do and how you want to fix it. But yeah, if you just do what everyone says, you could end up with a film that's getting pulled in a bunch of different ways, and usually that doesn't work out so well. But, on this film, I had a pretty A++ group of producers to work with. So you're talking about people who have a lot of experience working in this arena and weren't going to let the movie, get derailed.
Yeah, no, and I think that certainly would have helped in the process, rather than if you'd gone in sort of as a new director, say, into a studio system where it probably could have been quite challenging, I imagine.
Yeah, no, it's working on big movies is it's a challenge because there's the more money that's being spent, the more pressure there is for the movie to appeal to the widest possible audience. But also you learn that, Jerry says this all the time, you really don't know how a movie's going to perform until the weekend it comes out. You can have a movie that's testing off the charts. That doesn't translate to a successful film. And you can have a movie that doesn't test well with a particular test audience for whatever reason, but somehow when it comes out finds a whole new life and succeeds beyond. I mean, there's hundreds of stories of various movies that one way or the other were unexpected surprises. So you just have to ultimately, you got to go with your gut and what you truly believe and make the movie, that you set out to make.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think, for me, it's always a bit about being emotionally connected to the characters, having a story that means something. And, sometimes stuff is cut out because it sort of maybe doesn't test too well. But then the reverse side of that is that you have something that maybe feels disjointed, and then you lose yourself in the arc of someone, which can be counterproductive.
And listen to your audience. I mean, you may be trying to communicate a certain idea, but for whatever reason, it's not translating. So when you find out they're not getting it, you got to fix that. I do think that showing the movie to people is a very, very important part of the process. You need to step back. You can get certainly too far inside your own film. Things that about the film or the story that other people who have never seen it before have no idea. So it is important to, not that it has to be audience tested in the traditional way, but just showing it to people, showing it to friends, showing it to people who you have no connection to, is an important, very important part of the process.
So you're not just making the film purely for yourself, you're making it and you're taking on board what...
Well, you have to decide what's the effect you want it to have. And so, you can make it for yourself, but
if no one else likes
you're
it,
going to ignore what anyone says about it. Don't be surprised when you release the film if the feedback is the same. So you just have to be aware and okay with what people are telling you, because that's probably going to remain the same unless you make some changes.
So getting into sort of casting past the actors into your HODs, how does that process work for you? Was there any outside suggestions? Were the studios sort of saying, okay, we'd like this list of DOPs, or was it like, okay, this is my guy, or my girl, this is who I want for the position?
The first one usually for me is cinematographer, and I've made 5 films now with Claudio Miranda. So
that's a good start.
That's a good start. Claudio, he's first and foremost an artist, but he's also very, very clever when it comes to figuring out how to do something that hasn't been done before. And on every film we've made, we've always had to solve some new sort of challenge, whether it was the lit suits of Tron Legacy or the front projection of Oblivion. We're always kind of trying to solve some sort of problem. And obviously on this film, it was, can we fit 6 IMAX quality cameras into one of these cockpits? And that was a year-long process, including essentially creating a whole new camera along with Sony that was able to do it. And Claudio had a huge hand in the creation of the Venice camera from the very start. So Claudio was a no-brainer in terms of who would be right for this film. The other departments, sometimes there are people I've always wanted to work with that weren't available, or recommendations. Marlene Stewart, I'd worked with on Oblivion. She's our costume designer. Jeremy Hindle, the production designer, was someone that I always admired. And so I was very lucky to be able to get him to work on this film. But you kind of go through and, you look for people who ultimately have great taste, because you want to be able to empower them. You don't want to have to make every creative decision, you want to be able to give them a concept or an idea or a feeling, or explain the tone of the film, and then let them come back to you with their own ideas. And you need talented people to do that.
I've always thought taste is actually like one of the most important things about being a good filmmaker, because you grow up and you watch films and this is a good film, this is maybe not a good film, and it's often make or break. I think sort of tonally, and also what you just said about your collaborators. It's as much as them being on the same page as being talented. Because again, I suppose it's going in the right direction altogether. So I mean, do you like to get a mixture of people that already and some new faces to sort of mix it up?
Yeah, I love meeting new people and looking for people who bring in ideas that you would never think of before. So it's like you said, it's the job of the director. I think Kubrick called the director the idea and taste machine. You're that's kind of you're constantly coming up with ideas or solutions, ways of solving problems, and an overall sense of tone and taste, I guess, for the film, and what it is you're looking for, what it is you want to feel like. I'm always pulling references or making sure that everyone understands what kind of film you're making, because you're so much more powerful if you can align these thousands of people to all push in the same direction. If you can set a North Star for everyone, you can get so much more accomplished. If you're changing your mind all the time or indecisive, you have a lot of people working very hard, but the movie's not going anywhere. And that's a disaster, a waste of resources. So I like to try to, as early as possible, get everyone moving in the right direction. Doesn't mean you can't course correct during the way or change your mind, but it's important to communicate. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the job.
So in terms of your prep with the cinematography, how does that process start for you as a filmmaker? Do you send mood boards? Do you say, okay, here's a bunch of films that we're thinking? You've already mentioned the sort of the naval reference videos, but can you sort of talk a bit more for sort of a filmmaking
Yeah, I mean,
perspective?
one thing that I'm lucky to be able to do is in between films, I shoot commercials for television. And the reason I do that is because I find it's an amazing test bed to try new things, whether it's crew, like we were talking before, or lenses or a camera system. And on this movie, while we were prepping, Sony contacted me and said, we have this, new Sony Venice camera system. It's just a prototype, but we'd love for you to kind of come up with something to try it out. So I basically wrote a short film called The Dig, which has no dialogue in it, but is like an 8-minute short story that takes place in Los Angeles that gave us the opportunity to shoot with the Venice for the first time in its prototype stage. And then when we were shooting that, we were talking to them about the Rialto system, which is where you can remove the sensor from the body so that you have a much smaller form factor to put it in really small places. At that time we were thinking about car interiors. But then I got a job from, I think it was Hyundai or something, where they brought out the Rialto prototype with all these wires sticking out of it for the first time. And that was like in April of 2018. And we got to use that for the first time on a Hyundai commercial. So the whole time we're testing for Top Gun while shooting, commercials and trying different techniques. So it's a great thing for Claudio and I to use as a test bed and start to figure out. And the whole time, we're having conversations about the movie and how we're going to shoot it. Shortly after that, Claudio started doing some tests in a small jet called an L-39. And that's when we realized or started to figure out what it is we were going to try to achieve in Top Gun.
So in terms of the look, were you referencing the original quite a lot?
Yes.
In the first intro, like 5 minutes.
Yes.
I had tears of joy.
Oh yeah.
And I think most people, it's like when they have a child or they get married. I was just like with the first 2-3 minutes, it was tears of joy because it was the music, but it felt like the original, and I knew I was in safe hands. And you did that with everything in that first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's such an important sequence.
Yep.
So can you talk about sort of prepping that? How, because it's so important that first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The first few minutes of this film, I wanted the audience to know that we were making a Top Gun film. From the font of the opening titles, Harold Faltermeyer's music, the paragraph at the beginning that describes what Top Gun is. Obviously, we changed it slightly. We added 2 words to the paragraph, and that opening sequence on the Teddy Roosevelt and the USS Lincoln, which kind of had its origins with my very first trip I ever took on the carrier, what we talked about earlier. I went on there with my Leica and I shot all those stills, the little bobblehead bouncing on the bridge, all that stuff were stills that originated as stills that I shot on my first trip to spent 2 days just photographs of all these people doing their jobs. And then obviously the inspiration of the original, the wiggling fingers and all that stuff, worked that in. So I built up 150 storyboards of what this opening sequence could be. And we sent a crew, Claudio and a couple operators out there for a week, and we sent Skywalker Sound and their recordists out for a week, and we just captured as much footage as we could to build that opening montage. But the idea is to tell the audience, don't worry, we love Top Gun as much as you do. And that ultimately, after you've kind of been lulled into this safe space with Maverick and the Ninja, once you get to China Lake and he pulls in that hangar and you see Dark Star, you realize, okay, now it's going to go on its own journey and we're going to tell a new story. One little funny aside about shooting on the carrier, we had this thing on the top of the camera called Light Ranger, and basically what it does is it is able to send a signal. It sends like a little sonar signal out that bounces back and it tells you where focus is. So it's what the first AC uses to make sure that things are in focus, because they have this little overlay on the monitor that shows you the objects that are on the screen are sharp or out of focus, and it's just a nice little tool to make sure that you're getting good focus. Whenever we would point the camera at the F-35 stealth fighter, the focus would go to infinity.
Well, that's a good advert for them.
Yeah, so you couldn't pull focus on the stealth fighter, which I thought was which I guess proves that it works. But I just thought that was like a cool little detail about shooting on the deck.
So, I mean, we talked about taste, and we talked about the importance of this opening sequence, and the opening sequence really does, you're immediately like, oh, thank God this isn't going to be a crappy reboot. This is going to be a good movie, and it doesn't let go. Like after that, I will sort of say that, but something that I've always, I think it comes down to taste as well. It's a lot of people try and avoid cliches, and they avoid what you might call cheesiness. But I think it's really about balance. And actually, when it's done well, like in this, I suppose it comes from the characters. But there's moments that you expect to happen, and the film is setting up for them to happen. And you want them to happen. Like when Rooster hits the full throttle in the thing. You're desperate for it to happen. It's such a satisfying moment. How do you balance those moments and make sure it's fun, but it isn't one of those like sort of let's put in a cheap laugh moment that I think ruins a lot of movies?
I think it all comes in the service of story. If what you're putting in generally serves the story or serves the character, I think the choice is solid. The word cheesy gets thrown around a lot, I think, now with a certain generation, and I think what that translates to sometimes is earnest. The film is very earnest. There's not a lot of sarcasm in the film, which I think differentiates it from a lot of other big films, because it's just that tone is very different. It is definitely more of a throwback tone in that it wears its heart on its sleeve, and is very honest, I guess, and very truthful, and people say what they mean. Chris McQuarrie would always say that in Top Gun, subtext is text. People just say, what they're feeling or what they're thinking, and yeah, it comes off a little earnest, but that suits the film and this kind of story that we're telling about Maverick. So yeah, that was something we were aware of, that it was doing things a little different than maybe other films that, are its contemporary, but that's okay. We have all this history with these characters, and it just felt like we were being true to the story, and that was always our kind of guidepost.
I suppose when comedy comes from characters and it comes from the story and it feels authentic, I think the audience are much more responsive to that kind of way. I think it's when it's like, okay, we need more humor in this section, so let's have a gag.
Yep.
That people don't.
People know when a joke's been slotted in.
Yeah, just sort of slapped across the front of it.
Yeah, and if they're invested in your characters and it's coming from a true place of who that character is in that moment, like, for instance, I think the biggest laugh that I've seen in watching the movie with an audience is when Maverick comes running in across the snow, and he and Rooster have their argument, after both being shot down. It's a very funny moment, and it is a little broad, and I even remember shooting it with Miles, and Miles said to me, he's like, the tone feels like we're in a different movie right now than the one we've been shooting. And I said, and that's a good thing. We should have a shift here, because now you guys are not fighting against each other anymore. Now you're allies. Now it's a little bit more like the first film.
And you've earned it by that point.
You've earned it. They've had so much conflict after, an hour and 20 minutes of, them having all this conflict and drama between them. And now the kind of release you get from seeing them drop all that and just band together and work together to get out of there is so much fun. And it really starts to feel more like the energy of the first film for that last 25 minutes. You feel that Maverick Goose-like relationship, but now it's with Rooster in the back seat, and that's what we were, that's what we were aiming for. But I do remember shooting that, and even Miles noting that it feels like all of a sudden everything's changed, and it turned out to be a good thing.
Definitely, and I think it's in moderation as well. You haven't thrown it into every scene, and as you say, the characters earned it. What were some of the main challenges of actually doing the shoot itself? Probably mostly from a sort of a filming perspective.
Yeah, every day is a challenge. I say.
How long was the shoot for a start?
That's a good question. I believe it was about 89 or 90 days of shooting, but there was also like 40 days of aerial only days. So those days might have overlapped a little bit, but it was a lot. I mean, I was there every day of it. It was shot, basically over 9 months from September 2018 to July 2019. But yeah, every day is a challenge, whether it's shooting aerials, which are very tedious. It's a very tedious process where you're just getting, seconds or maybe a minute of footage every day.
Wow.
To, the dramatic scenes, the scenes in the hard deck where you're dealing with, hundreds of extras and introducing 5 or 6 characters. Even a scene like the sailing scene, which you'd think relative to airplanes would be easy, that was actually the hardest. We shot that 3 times.
Wow.
The first 2 times I had no wind. So it was me and Jen and Tom sitting on a boat in the middle of the water.
Not the worst thing to do, though.
Yeah, there's like dolphins swimming around us, but there was no wind and no movement, so it was very, very boring.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had to end up having to go to San Francisco to shoot that sequence, which was a challenge for a variety of reasons. But just, I have profound respect from anyone who makes a movie about sailing, because you can't control the wind, and so that was a challenge. Yeah, so the whole movie was a challenge, but a very exciting, very fun one, very memorable one. Standing out in the middle of a restricted training range and having F-18s blast, 5 feet above your head. I have so many great memories. The shot where the F-18 flies over camera and then pulls up and creates the double swirl when Maverick's proving the course can be flown. I just remember all of us just fist pumps in the air. It's like one of those moments where you're like, that shot's going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
So just, a lot of great memories for, hard fought shots, but at the end of the day, worth it.
So just a quick sort of recap on what shooting involves for aerial stuff. Is it a mix of CGI and live stuff? Because obviously not all the actors could be doing some of the stuff that's...
Yeah, we weren't shooting airplanes down, with missiles. They weren't avoiding surface to air. So yeah, we shot as much as we could. We always shot real airplanes. And got at least the base footage as much in camera as possible. Obviously, things like bombs and missiles and explosions, we weren't going to do anything that put any actor at any level of risk. But they're always being flown by real naval aviators, often Top Gun pilots. Phoenix was always flown by a female aviator, which I think is cool. Yeah. And and then we would shoot real aircraft, and then if we wanted to be an aircraft that doesn't exist or doesn't fly anymore, we would, use very sophisticated techniques to reskin an F-18 and turn it into something else. So we're always shooting a real aircraft to start with, but sometimes we're turning it into something else, which is a fun magic trick that we kind of really employed on this film.
So talking about some of the emotional scenes and your sort of process as a director working with actors, let's take the Val Kilmer scene, for instance. Obviously these actors, you send them out there and they're going to do an incredible job anyway. But what's your process? Do you like to do rehearsals? Do you like to sort of discuss from the script and send a few ideas? How does all that
definitely start? It all starts with the script. Everyone's sitting down and reading the scene together. Val and Tom and me and Chris and Jerry sitting around a table and reading this scene
table
through.
Read, yeah.
What's that?
A table read, yeah.
Yeah, table read.
Yeah, nice.
You don't have to be acting, just reading, read through it, discuss what's the story we're trying to tell here? What do we want someone who's watching it to feel, everyone's got their ideas or opinions, but you want to make sure that you work out the big stuff ahead of time. Rehearsals is it depends on the actor, I find. Some actors love to rehearse. Some actors love to block so they know where they're moving, but maybe don't want to really rehearse the emotion too much. Miles, I've made 3 movies with him. He doesn't like to do too much in rehearsals because he wants to save it for the day. But every actor's different. The scene with Iceman and Maverick, like you referred to, once we'd been through the table read and everyone's ideas and the scene, everyone was happy with the scene, no point in rehearsing with those guys. They're going to deliver. Masters, yeah. And so, you get on the day, and I try to create an environment where everything's figured out in terms of ahead of time, in terms of, where the camera is, what the environment's like, what the lighting is, maybe a little bit of blocking, but I try to create as much space for the actors to do their thing from the beginning, and only give notes if I feel like there's something else worth trying. But I would say I'm not the most heavy-handed when it comes to prescripting a performance. I like to hire actors who bring something to the table and just create an environment where they can feel very free to try things, experiment, mix it up, and try to get those moments that are really special, that really make films great.
And do you ever struggle on something like a Hollywood movie like this, where actors maybe, because I suppose there's so much to plan in terms of the visual side, and it's such a big production with stunts and everything. Do you ever have a situation where, okay, the actor's struggling with motivations, but it's very hard to move everything around on the sort of the production side, like move the camera around because you've just been massive dolly shot set up or that kind of thing. Do you have those kind of problems, or do you find like there's just enough time to get around those things?
No, I mean, you have to be prepared ahead of time. I love to over prepare and make sure that you know what your plan is for the day. I like to have a plan that everyone knows, and so that I'm comfortable changing it if it needs to change. But yes, sometimes on movies like this, there are moments where it feels a little ridiculous because you don't have, the actors have nothing to react to. The scene that comes to mind is when Maverick's proving the course can be flown in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Tom's side of that scene was an absolute blast to film because Tom's in the plane doing something that no actor's ever done before. Probably no Navy pilot's ever done before, which is fly that canyon at that altitude with, a Blue Angel pilot in the front seat. So from his end, it's extremely exhilarating. The other side of that scene, which is everyone staring at the screen and reacting, is me on a microphone at the head of that, in that set, talking them through what they're seeing on a screen that isn't happening. So, all those reaction scenes in that scene are them just reacting to me talking, through Maverick's on the course. He just went through the first gate, and me trying to kind of pump them up.
A bit more excited than that.
And he made it, yeah. I'm not going to perform here on the podcast, but, giving my best to try to get them to understand what it is they're reacting to. I'm never going to be able to be as exciting as if the scene was actually happening, but the actors understand what we're going for. And so there are scenes like that where you have to step in and make sure you're getting the performance you need so that when you put the scene together, it all works. But it's a unique job. I mean, there's so many different hats you wear as a director on a movie like this. Sometimes it feels like you're CEO of a major corporation, and some days you're lining up the perfect shot, which is what we think of as directing. But there's a whole bunch of different things you have to do in the job. And for me, that's what makes it exciting, is that it's different every single day.
Was it as tightly paced with what you'd filmed on the page? because it's a very, like, from the moment it goes, you're basically either in an amazing drama sequence or you're in really gripping, exciting sort of flight sequences. Was it that tight, or
No.
was that the editor that's kind of?
No, it got tightened and tightened and tightened. There were scenes we shot, several scenes, that aren't in the final movie, that would have. That slowed it down, and ultimately found out weren't necessary to tell the story we were telling. So, no, of course, it's not that tight the first time you put together. You put it all together and you quickly realize you don't need this, or you need a different version of this scene, or you can tighten it up by, there's sequences in the film that are completely out of the order that they were scripted, but for the better. So it's the editorial process you're remaking the movie all over again. And again, that's what makes it fun, is it's a totally different experience than shooting.
And Hans Zimmer came on board at one point in the process?
Very early. I mean, it was from the beginning, it was Harold Faltermeyer, who wrote all the beautiful themes that you hear throughout the film, and some tracks that are basically unchanged from the first film, teaming him up with Hans, who has a long history with Jerry Bruckheimer and Tom Cruise. They all did Days of Thunder together, actually. Always wanted to work with him. And then Lauren Balfe came in to help facilitate the fact that when COVID hit, we were kind of spread all over the world, including musicians who, we couldn't record musicians together. They had to record their instruments one at a time. So Lauren did a masterful job of pulling all that together. And then finally, the kind of gift that Lady Gaga gave us halfway through. Yeah, we were done with our main photography at that point when she gave us a demo of this incredible song that Hans ended up weaving into the orchestral themes of the movie. So it's, again, another idea of 4 super talented people collaborating on something that feels very much of one whole.
Amazing. Just to wrap up the last question,
Sure.
If you could give your younger self a little bit of advice going into it, because I think a lot of people have moments in their career where they're struggling or they're not making it up to the next step that they want to, from like indie to bigger stuff. What might that be from you?
Advice to my younger self?
Or to someone starting out, maybe, just who wants to make Hollywood movies?
Don't give up. It sounds very generic, but when I first moved to Los Angeles to be a director, my first 15 months, I think I pitched on 26 or 27 commercials and got 0.
Wow.
So you're going to hear a lot of no's at the beginning because no one wants to take a risk on someone who hasn't made anything before, but keep at it, keep pushing, and when that opportunity arrives, be ready, and then knock it out of the park.
Amazing. Joseph, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I think to make a Hollywood movie at this level is a really big achievement, and I hope it does scoop up at the awards this year.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Filmmakers Podcast today. If you'd like to support our ongoing efforts to bring the filmmaking world to life, have a look at our Patreon page.